There we go. It would help if I learned what the hell I'm doing. So, good morning. It's June 2nd. It's Friday. Um, I don't know, I'm kind of out of sorts today. Been annoying everybody, annoying myself. So, but good morning. Hope all is well. I saw an uptick in rates this week. In some places, in other places, like Schneider was posting loads for 48 cents a mile, and they weren't partials either. But good morning. I hope all is well in your world. I hope everything is in good shape. So let's see. Um, I don't know if I mean, if you guys have some requests for the low board, let me know. I'm kind of talked out. I probably shouldn't even gone live this morning. I feel like I talk too much. I feel like I'm constantly rambling, and I guess that's what you have to do as a influencer. But I'm sure there's plenty of topics we can talk about. Um, but at the end of the day, who cares? That's the mood I'm in, right? That's the mood I'm in. Um, Let me look at something here. I was interested. So historically, usually the rates start to uptick after Memorial Day, and it's so far it's shown that here and there. Um, I'm seeing a little bit more money on some loads. I'm seeing a little bit more volume, but I really didn't have to dispatch much this week. Everybody's off except for one truck, and I should have gotten in my truck and did some loads. But we got Wednesday. I got things going on, and I think this weekend will be the first weekend that we don't have anything going on. So who knows? I might just jump in the truck and do a load or two. Um. Anyways, let's go over the low board stuff. Let's do some comments here, and then we'll we'll get into low board stuff. We'll look at some hot market maps. Sean, good morning. You are first. How are things going at the Big Orange? I'm seeing some people post some pretty decent settlements, and then you have the other half that everybody's turning in their SFI trucks, and so it's kind of all over the place. So I was just kind of curious. Rockin' Robin, trucking. What's up? Good morning. Truckers Anonymous. Good morning. Randy, what's up? What are you doing? What are you doing? David Edwards, good morning. Rat, lay it down. Howdy, snore to the Lord. Shannon is yelling. Good morning, everyone. Ever so cheerful. David Edwards says good morning to Shannon. CDN, good morning, Steve. Happy Friday. Greg Zimmer, good morning. Glad to see you rolling. Shannon says hi to David. DIY semi first. Everybody saying hi to DIY. So, speaking of DIY, this book, I got to do it like this. This book is good. I'm digging it. Maybe I'll try to finish that today. It's really about the power of negotiation, but it's also about psychological manipulation. So anyways, it's a lot of it's stuff that I've already been doing, but the other half it's like, wow, that's pretty cool, and I've tried it and it works. So mind control. You know what? It's Friday. Let's do this. I'm going to put a public link out there. How's that? You guys want to join in? If you're not driving, you can't be driving, and I got to know you. Like I got to see you and know you, right? So, Anyways, let's look at some low board stuff, and we'll take a look at some rates here and there, see what's going on. Let's look at reefer in Wisconsin. Seeing that DIY is in here. Let's see what that looks like. Here's the reefer hot market map. Minnesota was kind of asleep for a while in the van world. Let's see what Wisconsin's doing. You get 216 a mile to go down to Atlanta. What is up, Mr. DIY?
What's happening?
What's up? Freight
Not much.
Connect.
Oh,
That's a great background.
shows how long it's been since I've been live. Let me change that background. Here, this one's pretty.
You're gonna get hit by that European truck.
I've always wanted Scania tattooed as a tramp stamp.
Don't do that. You almost made me spit my coffee out.
Oh. What's happening this morning?
Not much. What are you seeing on rates? You've probably dispatched and booked more loads than I did this week. What are you seeing?
A little bit better. Actually, what I'm happy to see is volumes have been just a little bit better. Rates are, they've been a little better for us in the reefer here, but I'm just happy to have some loads to pick from. I don't judge it really by the load board. When I look at the DAT, you can see the maps like you look at, or the inbound versus outbound. I go by how many emails I'm getting from the various people that I looked at book loads from, and how many loads are on those emails. So
that makes sense.
We just came off a DOT week and then a holiday. I'm surprised it held up through the week as well as it did, and we'll see what next week brings.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how next week is. I too look at the emails, and it was kind of funny. 3 brokers that they called me Monday morning, like, "Hey, what do you need? What do you need?" I'm like, "Nothing. I got 1 truck to book, and I just booked them."
Yeah, I've heard from some brokers this week that I don't, I haven't heard from in a few months. Part of the reason I like to go by the emails rather than the load board is because of the ridiculous, stupid ways that they post stuff anymore. They post the same load 50 times, or this, you got 10 different brokers posting the same load, competing over it, and that skews the numbers just unbelievably. So
yeah, and a lot of these, like, I had a driver call me. He was trying to book a Landstar load, and what I do?
Sorry, I just got a really funny text message. I'll send it to you later.
Oh, okay. And the agent told the driver that they weren't set up, and it was just Landstar, right? My Landstar video is doing well, so
I did have 2 brokers try to scam me in the last week.
Oh yeah, explain.
I can't. I got to save it for a video. One of them's getting reported every place I can find.
Oh wow,
ridiculous. And then somebody texted me yesterday, "Hey, this broker's doing this. Is that a red flag?" I'm like, yeah. So that's not going away.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that as much on the 123, but yeah, DAT definitely still seeing the Gmail, no credit, brokerages. I had a friend of mine actually offer to sign his brokerage over to me.
Really?
Yeah, he decided that he was booking a couple of loads, and he decided that it wasn't for him. He didn't like where that was heading. So he texted me. He goes, "Hey man, I don't know if it's possible, but I'd like to sign the brokerage over to you." Said it costs like $1,800 for the bond, and I wanted to offer it to you before I shut it down. And I was like, yeah.
How old is it?
I don't. Maybe a year. I know that he followed Sage's advice and got it. Put the bond on it and then let it age, but and he's moved a few loads locally, but there's something about it he didn't like doing, and and it would be a conflict of interest with Rig Runner. But so I told him, and plus I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been one of these guys like, you know what,
You're already
screw
doing
these
it.
brokers. I'm gonna be a broker myself. I was like, no. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, I'd
that
like.
year could go a long ways towards establishing credit. So if you had any credit established, that would really help. Or just the year in itself would be. He should try to sell it to somebody, even if it's just for what his bond cost. Get something out of it.
Yeah,
I spoke to a dude the other day in Nigeria that might be interested.
Nigeria. Oh man. That would be the way. No, I don't know if he's going to shut it down before he tries to sell it or what, but I don't even know how any of that works, and CDN has given me some material to work on some brokerage stuff, but I think it's more, to help rig runners, and so I'm just kind of, I don't know, I'm still in this weird limbo. Part of me wants to get in the truck and the other part of me wants to make this work, and so far I've been making it work. It's just been a light week, and so when I have a light week, my mind wanders. I get on the internet too much, and then I get in a foul mood. And here I am.
You
So,
you are the limbo king of Southern Missouri.
yeah, I am. Um, I was looking at Uber the other day, and their Pennsylvania loads that they got coming out of here was actually paying um, close to $3,000, which is what they used to pay. For a while, they were only offering like 1,900 to go out there from here. I'm like, $1.90 a mile to go into Pennsylvania. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I had it's one of the regular things I was doing here out of Wisconsin. Their freight was up for bid and bid on some of it, and the new contracts took hold yesterday. They started and they just shredded them rates to the bone. The Phoenix loads that were at 4,500 are now $3,000. Texas was we're getting 3,200, and that's now 1,700. I don't know how these brokers think they're going to cover them. I hope freight, deeply freight kicks off right now because these brokers ain't going to be able to cover these loads, and that customer can eat their own freaking lunch and then come begging back for trucks.
Yeah, well, that's kind of been the cycle I've seen with like some of the click and goes. Is that like I noticed like Uber's rates going down quite a bit. Um, when they started the bidding process, they were using that JB Hunt angle. It's like, okay, well, let's see if drivers can be their own worst enemy, and they put it down for a really low rate. And then I see some insane stuff like that. The two screenshots I sent you the other day with that Schneider load.
Yeah,
What,
yeah.
what
I
was
don't think
that?
they're going to give up so easily. They're still going to play the games of making you think that
Let,
things have to be done for nothing.
yeah, let me get this screenshot up here.
It's almost third quarter, by the way, and I think earlier in this year, probably 4 or 5 months ago, we talked about there may be a little bit of a increase in volumes for third quarter. So I don't expect much from fourth quarter, though. I expect it to be really crappy. But third quarter, um, maybe a little uptick in volumes, which would be good for us.
Well, one of the things I look for is, especially in the van world, is that Christmas rate starts. It seems to start shipping earlier and earlier in the year.
Yeah,
For a while it was September, and then with all the logistics issues that the vid created, they started shipping that stuff in August, and sometimes I've seen Christmas rate as early as July, like late July. And if you go to any Walmart, and you'll see that like July 1st, or after the 4th of July, they've got fall stuff out there. The school lists are on there, and so I agree with you. I think the uptick in freight will be some stuff that's being held off, and also Christmas rate, early Christmas rate. So
yeah. But boy, is that going to make fourth quarter stinky.
yeah, it's definitely gonna, and that's kind of what happened to me with when I was at Landstar. There was a point where Landstar has this delay on the rates when it comes to the spot, and what happened was it's like someone hit a switch. The spot was doing pretty bad, and I was still doing okay. The rates at Landstar were still pretty good, so I was like, "Oh man, look at me! I'm awesome because I'm with a good company," you know. And then meanwhile, someone went flip, and and after Christmas, man, it just took a big dump, and you couldn't find anything above a certain rate per mile, and all the dedicated, um, direct, really good freight that Landstar had was off the low board, and or if it was posted, it was gone. But they never took the posting down. I think that's one of my biggest complaints is when you're trying to book a truck and you're making all these phone calls and you keep calling all these loads that have already been covered. You know, so sometimes I'm gun shy about calling on a load that's more than 10 minutes old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, or you see a load that's posted over and over and over, and you call on it and it's gone.
Yeah.
You know?
The auto posting sometimes doesn't work. So brokers use auto post, and then even when you unpost a load, sometimes the auto posting keeps pushing it through. So sometimes that's why that happens. Oh, but if your load's covered, take it down. Well, sometimes you do take it down, but it just doesn't go away because the DAT system is so wonderful.
Sure.
um, I got something that's been bothering me. Can I put somebody on blast live on your show?
It depends. Go ahead.
I'll cover up the name. I won't show any names. So I went to the Matt. We went to the Matt's truck show, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
And I met this insurance guy um, that I talked to for probably 20 minutes. The dude, they do new entrants, and he says they can typically save new entrants roughly 20% versus what they pay with Progressive.
Mhm.
I said, "Boy, are you and me going to be great friends?" Because that's one of the biggest questions I get in emails is, "Hey, Progressive's killing me as a new entrant."
Mhm.
And we talked and we set up this deal where, hey, uh, come on with me and do a live show, and we'll send you a whole bunch of business. But first, I'm going to send you a couple guys that I know personally, and you're going to give them quotes so that I can make sure you're actually saving people money.
Mhm.
Now, I think perhaps even maybe more than 100 people would have called him because, like, I'm inundated with these questions all the time.
Right.
So after the truck show, I went to follow up with him. I got his business card right here, um, and called maybe a dozen times, left voicemails, uh, emailed this handy dandy email here maybe a half dozen times. Um, no response ever, never ever. Now I'm trying to send a dude hundreds of thousands of dollars of business a year, right?
Mhm.
For him to make money in his business because that's what he does. Um, you think you could take my call, return an email? Um, you don't need business. Is that why we're in the insurance industry? Is not to take on customers? Is that what we do? So Iron Insurance of management, if you're watching, you have a subpar, terribly communicating agent. And even if he does call me back now, we ain't doing business because I'm not sending people to you that can't give any kind of service to your customers. You might have the best rates in the industry. You'll never see one of my referrals because you can't communicate. You can't call people back. You can't give them customer service that they're paying for. So Iron Services, go screw, and I'll find somebody else.
Did did they have a big booth at Matt's, or was it
No, it
just
wasn't big. It was just your standard, smaller, what, 8 by 10 booth or whatever. They had two people there, two podiums.
because I'm beginning to wonder if it was some kind of information.
Well, I finally did get
You
a
know,
hold of him. I texted his
mining.
personal cell phone, which is on the business card here,
Uh huh.
right? And all I got back was a text. Here, I'll read it. I'll read it word for word here if I can find it, so I don't misquote. Um, hey, sorry, we put a freeze on new policies, and I don't know when it will be lifted. Sorry for the inconvenience. So you're an insurance company, but you're not going to write any policies. Brilliant. What are you going to do? You're gonna sit around scraping gum off the bottom of the tables all day? Like, you're in the insurance business, that's all you do. You're not gonna write policies? That'd be like Progressive saying, "Ah, we're not gonna take on any customers." No, nobody in their right mind does that. So, and you're gonna turn down access to one of the, uh, you know, a decent sized audience that this is one of the whole topics of the conversation. Just ridiculous. It's, some people don't understand the social media thing yet.
Well,
Like, you have direct access to the very people you're trying to do business with. Nobody that is not interested is watching,
uh-huh.
and you don't pay anybody anything unless they sign up for your service. I couldn't imagine that with CDN. That'd be like me coming to you and say, "Hey, man, I got 10 shippers back here. They're dying for somebody to move their freight. Probably $10 million a year. Can we get together and talk about this? And I'll just connect you guys, and you can do business." And then you saying, yeah, I'm not really looking to do that. I don't really do that. Well, I mean, I do that. I'm just not doing it right now. It's ridiculous.
Because everyone's looking for the quick buck.
Yeah, you got to figure if each policy is $20,000 and then bring them, I don't know, 50. I realistically think a lot of people would have went because insurance is killing them. That's $1 million a year in business for nothing. And you didn't pay anything for it.
Well, what about this theory? Acceleration rules kind of read my mind here. Classic trade show scammer. I'm wondering if there was an ulterior motive.
No, they're legit. I checked them out. They're a legit insurance company. Truth be told, they're affiliated somehow with Knight Swift. I don't know if they own them.
Let me ask you this: this contact that was there, is he more of an agent for this insurance company, or does he actually work for the company?
He's an agent.
Okay, so again, that just shows. I think I've brought this point up before. People go to trade shows and they don't have an exit plan. That's the most important thing about if you're trying to be selling your services or products at a trade show, going there, setting up a booth, that's all part and parcel of it. But the most important thing is you meet all these people. Now you get back and it's been 3 days, you've been away from the office, your email's full, you got voicemails full, and then you've done nothing. You never followed up. You didn't establish no true connections from that trade show. So it's a waste of that guy's time. It was a waste of your time. I would be contacting that insurance company over and above him and just saying, look, is there someone interested in this? This is what this guy told me is a story. Maybe
they don't know it. Maybe you're right. I should. And they don't know.
I would reach, because it's no different than dealing with a brokerage, right? You got you got the freight broker, and you got agents. Your experience with one agent, also you're like, this was a great brokerage, great experience. You go to the second agent, that didn't go so good. You go to the third one, not bad. You go to the fourth, not bad. And then you go back to that guy, not so bad. So that's why when you're working with that agent model concept, just like a real estate agent, you have good and bads. Insurance agents are going to be the same. So before you make a complaint to the guy, maybe phone the company itself and just saying, look, I was at Matt's, just verifying. I was informed that you guys are taking on newer carriers, and just find some facts and see what they say.
Dang you and your reason and logic.
That's what he does, man.
I'm sitting here trying to be emotional, and here you come in all logical.
I thought this was Kansas. I don't know how I got here, but I thought this was Kansas. But
I do that to Greg all the time. He'll call me to complain, and then he's like, "Yeah, I guess I don't have a right to complain." It's funny.
Well, I heard something about brokers and people starting at brokerages and then not carrying through with it, and I know that I heard Steve saying that you're on the fence, and I just wanted to touch on that, if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead, beat me up.
I'm not going to beat you up. I'm going to beat up the concept. Like, so this fellow that is called you and offering you to take over his bond.
He's a really good friend.
Yeah.
So,
no, I'm not going to come down on him.
Oh, okay.
I believe that all the steps he's done has been accurate, because Adam can assure that, right? He knows he's created. He has a carrier, brokerage, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mentorship and persistence, because think about it. However long I've been joining your live feeds, we've talked a lot about sales processes.
Right.
And everyone in the chat, if they've taken a few of those notes, did some other research, all of them would have at least one in the last 2 years. Everyone on this chat that's been following you should have had one new customer that they got.
Yeah.
But sales is harder than it's perceived.
Right.
So that's the point. So getting out from behind the truck. Oh yeah, I'm going to get my own direct shippers. Well, we seen that. We seen it during the good times when no one was complaining. They're just enjoying the good times. And then when the rates started going down, we saw all the complaining about broker transparency. We see all the complaining about the rates are down and that the brokers are holding all the cash. But no one talked about, there's a couple, I shouldn't say no one. There's a couple people out there in the YouTube worlds that did talk about making some connections. But the point is, you have to, if you're going to get into the sales game, whether as a carrier, getting your own direct customers, or as a broker, sales is way harder than you believe. If you've never done it before with no one to coach you and mentor you, it's because it's an emotional roller coaster. You start out thinking, okay, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to get these customers. Everyone talks about it, so I'm just going to go out and do it. Well, you call a company. Well, we're kind of busy right now, because you know that they have freight, but you call them up and it didn't go as you thought. It's okay. You call the next and the next. By the end of the day, you're like, what's going on here? I got 10 years driving experience. I know this industry. Why can't I talk to people? And that's why I was saying is if like for yourself, Steve, I know you've been on the fence about the starting. I wouldn't wait to get to the level where you're making an income to run a family. It's not happening in 3 months. Even in 3 months, if you start booking loads, you're not making big bucks off of those first loads. Like, unless you're unique and you're doing some specialty freight, and you have some unique contacts, and somehow you're a really, really good negotiator, that your customers just love you so much that they're willing to pay you big bucks on those loads. You've done something unique. That's an exception. But I would say the norm is most are going after, like, I guess when we think about business and differentiate ourselves, we always talk about that, well, everyone's got a box as a box, right? 5 trucks all parked into a dock. How do you make yourself different? And think about, and also what, I guess maybe it's not always what you can do differently, but what's that, what can you do so that no one is wanting to or willing to repeat what you're doing? Right. And examples of that, there's three people that we can think about in our times that we're witnessing, that we've lived through and seen, and some of them aren't with us today, but Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Those 3 individuals. And I guess you could throw the guy, the Tesla guy in there, but those 3 particular people, like, I look at Jeff Bezos. Why didn't Sears in Canada? I don't know if Sears is still open in the United States, but in Canada they closed. And Sears, we all grew up with the Sears catalog, right?
Right.
You always had to pick something on the page, even if you didn't want that walker. You had to pick one of those walkers, right? You're with your friend flipping through the pages, and you always had to pick something off that page. Right. But the point was, when I was growing up as a kid, Sears had catalogs. Like, all the people outside of the cities, that was their biggest shopping thing. So they had an audience. They couldn't figure out how to do what Jeff Bezos did with Amazon. They had the distribution. They had the stores all around North America, and as we saw, we know what's happening with the malls. That people are going less and less. They could have cut half of those in and turned each one into a distribution center, but did they? They didn't. Right. And when I grew up, there was a company called Consumer Distribution. It was very similar to Amazon. You just went in there, you wrote down the stuff you wanted, you gave it to the person, they brought your stuff from the back to the front. Take Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. Other than a few other odd people that are real tech savvy, that kind of build their own little world, if you're going to buy a computer, you're going to buy an Apple or a Windows-based computer. No one else has repeated it yet. So the point, to full circle, is what can you do? What are you doing in your trucking business and your freight brokerage that's going to make you stand out, that no one else is willing to do the work that it's taking to get to take you over, to take you out of the marketplace. That's what it comes down to, right? When even the customer says, "Oh yeah, we should start doing it." No, let's just let DIY. Let's just let Steve do the thing. They do such a good job. Why spend all our time and energy? We'd just let them keep doing it. We like them, they like us, we're happy, and we'll just keep them giving them business, and they'll manage it for us. They make it so much easier. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the whole thing is, and if you're just starting out, believe me, it's not an easy process. Ask anyone that if you can find any new broker as an agent, next time you're on the phone and saying, "How long have you been with that? Are you an agent?" If they say yes, just ask these questions for your own curiosity. If they say, when you're talking to some broker or an email, just by curiosity, are you an agent or an employee for the brokerage? I'm an agent. Okay. Out of curiosity, how long did it take you before you were kind of, making some money where you can say that, you weren't scraping the bottom of the barrel to make your living and pay your rent or pay your mortgage and, live life? And I bet you most will say 6 months to a year.
So
Yeah. I recognize that. That's some good words. What were you going to say, Adam?
quick question. So it seems to me, CDN, that what you're saying is you're going to start getting a whole bunch of U.S. freight, and then build a network of trucks here in the United States of trustworthy carriers that you trust to run your freight, and you're going to become the biggest, and we're going to help you be the biggest and best freight broker in the United States. Maybe change your name to CDN Robinson, something like that. And then we're all going to be successful together, and you're going to be our leader. That's seems to be what I'm hearing.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I can tell you that training people is way harder than you think. Training drivers is one thing, but training people to, especially if you create a book, imagine like DIY. Let's say you have some broker freight. You built this trust. The customers are trusting on you. And now you're like, okay, between running the carrier and running this brokerage, I can't do anymore. Right. So I need some help.
Yeah.
So you throw someone in dispatch. It takes, like, I'll give an example of someone who seems to be balancing it quite well. He seems to be, at least we haven't talked to him lately, but Cash is King fellow. He's got some flatbeds and some hot shots, and he's got some, dispatch. He's got a few things going on, but he's got someone, and he seems to have circled himself with some really good people. He acquired some really good people, it seems like. But for the most part, to throw someone to become a dispatcher, to run your business and trust them with it, is way harder than you believe. Like to find the right person, the process, even like my number one weakest skill, even when I worked for a company as a district manager, was interviewing. Interviewing people was because there's a real art to an actual interview with someone. It's not as simple as, so how long you been, what's your experience? Yeah, I was a driver for 10 years. Okay. So what kind of did you pull? Yeah, I pulled some flatbed. Okay. I did some hoppers. Okay. Have you ever held dry van? No. You go through this thing, but you didn't really dive into what's their personality, and you think that they're all calm and cool and collective, and then they go to their first customer and the customer does something, and then they rip into the customer, and you're like, that's not the person I hired.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't do enough checks, and then you found out that they didn't show up, they were late, and they don't communicate well. And you're like, boy, his on paper he looked really good, and in person he seemed real calm and cool and collective, but the actions don't meet what he presented. And that's what happens in interviews, because some people, you can hire someone who was timid, really shy, kind of was iffy, and that might have been your best employee. And the reason I'm bringing these up is that you need it, again, just like hiring is experience. You need experience, and it takes time you go in, like if you're ever setting up interviews, you kind of have a list of key questions you want to ask, but a lot of it is by feel, right? And I think
absolutely.
I think the biggest thing with lately, I've been talking to some carriers. I've had some issues, some bad. I had a couple of rough weeks there, with a lot of it all stemmed around lack of communication by carriers. So I kind of had some heart to hearts with some of these carriers saying, you guys, if you want to play in this game, you really got to step up. Like, you're just not doing the following. And they're like, yeah, well, we're trying to hire someone. And this one fellow calls me back up and he's like, I said, have you written down, because I talked to him months ago about this, have you written down the job description? No. Well, I talked to you months ago about this. Just take a napkin. I said, go to Indeed, look up this role. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you have a job you're posting for, a safety manager, a truck dispatcher versus a truck dispatcher is significantly different than a freight broker dispatcher. And people say, no, yes, yes. And Steve can attest. Imagine what your day is like, Steve. So as long as you dispatch the trucks that need to be dispatched, once they're dispatched, and these drivers are pretty good, like, they're not going to bail on you, you can kind of coast a little bit. On the customer side, sure, they might call you saying, hey, my truck is, my guy just called, he's got an airline leak or some minor thing, something not major. Well, and that same thing as a carrier, as the worst case scenario, you have everything lined up, you got 6-10 trucks you dispatched, everyone's all set up, and a driver calls saying, hey, I just leaving the shipper, I turned the corner and I heard some bang or something, and something broke. Okay, so it's going to need a tow, like, we're going to be hours. Well, at least as a carrier, you can just call the broker and throw it back to them. And then you just delete your trucks on any load boards and put it out of office, and you can focus on that truck.
Right.
You may still have some other issues, but the stress levels, how you manage it, is different. As a broker, if I get the call from Steve or DIY that my driver just broke down, he's not going to be able to make that pickup, depending on the urgency of the load and how soon the driver could be repaired. If you think that the driver will be repaired by the next day, and we have a relationship from before, then I might talk to the customer, they're okay. As long as we pick it up before the end of the day tomorrow, we've pushed the delivery, all is good. So it's not so stressful for all parties. But when you got that brand new carrier for the first time, and this is a trusted customer that trusts in you, you're not going to sit around and you don't have a history with this guy. First off, he called, he waited 2 hours after the driver broke down before he called you. Then, just the way that the whole thing came down, you can't trust it. So now you're going to have to cancel that load with this guy and find someone else and make it happen. And meanwhile, you're dealing with some other issues. You got five issues all happening at once. So the point is, being a broker, yeah, life can be great as a broker as well. You get some loads in the morning, you cover them all off, no problems. But as the broker, though, the stress at the end of the day, there's two different stresses. As a driver, carrier, dispatcher, if you didn't find that load, or the broker canceled the load on you, then the stress is, man, my driver expected to get that pickup so that he'd be on home on time for whatever it is. And now you're letting that driver down. So now you're taking on the risk to say, this driver gave me 2 weeks notice to get him home, and this was his go home load, and it's failed. And even if he's an owner operator where he's getting, he only gets percentage of the load, do you as a carrier say, you know what, and this guy, he emphasized the necessity to be at home for whatever this is. Do you as a carrier say to him, this broker's let him down, I'm going to pay you out of my carrier, I'm going to pay you the value of that load so you can go home. It's not your fault that this truck load. How much are you willing to do that? How many carriers are willing to do that? They might say, well, we'll pay your fuel to get you home, right? And they say, oh, this guy canceled, well, I'll give you a few bucks for fuel. So there's that, there's that level. Because think about that. When you do that as a carrier to a driver, yeah, it's hurting your pocketbook. But if you have 10 drivers, what's the best way to grow your carrier for drivers? Through natural attrition. Other drivers are talking to other drivers, and they say, this place is awesome. So the perception, like, think about it. Like, I gave that example about a month ago now. I had to get to the airport in Vancouver, and we were going to take an Uber, and there was a yellow cab guy, and he was saying, oh, there's a bunch of ships that just came in and it's really busy. I can take you there for this price. And the price was pretty similar. He says he estimated the price, and he said it was very similar to what Uber would be. So we thought, okay, I'll give this guy our business. Well, that was the worst drive in the world. And I didn't have his driver number. I could have looked at the car number, But I
Right.
mean, like, he's driving, and it's like all the time is he's just these little jerks, and you're in the back seat, and I could feel every one of them. And then, right, like, it's just like I'm like, just relax, just chill, you know. And then we're coming to a stoplight, and this car stopped, and he's accelerating. Why? Like, save your brakes, buddy. Right? Just take your foot off the gas and coast. And then when you see that the light turns green, then you can start to accelerate. But he would slow down when there's no one around us. And as soon as there's other cars, he would accelerate. We turned the corner, the last corner we had to take. Literally, he turns the corner. I don't know what he was doing, but a car was coming. It's this little like Toyota Prius or something, like the tiniest little car, and he's got the shield in there. And it was just the user experience. Like this car came in, like they were inches. This car's coming and he's turning right. Like he turned like he was a semi into the third lane instead of like, I don't know. But at the end of the day, it was the worst experience. Like it'll be a long time coming, or I'm gonna have to be really drunk to be taking another yellow cab before I do that.
I think it's their training school. I think they're all like that, because every time I've ever been in a yellow cab here in Springfield, it's scared the crap out of me.
So think about that. So just whether you like Uber or you don't, what are some, when you start to compare the pros and cons, why hasn't yellow cab, it says, oh, download our app. So, okay, if you live in a certain city, you can download the app to the local yellow cab business.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe if we surveyed 1,000 people or 100 people, even if you hate Uber, most will agree the end user experience using Uber is 10 times better than any other cab company, or even Lyft or Uber. Why? Because when you press the button on that app, you see, once you select a car and a car says it's on its way, you actually see the driver's face, the name of their name, and the type of car and the color of the car they're coming. You can watch them on a map coming to you. You see if there's any issues, and then you can give them, if there's a problem, you can immediately rate Lyft or Uber, and that driver doesn't want to get complaints. He wants to give good experience service, so that he's a high star, because if he sees that he's a high star driver, other people will be more likely to use him. Right? So again, back to the carrier, if you're a trucking company and that driver, your go home load for a driver, and he's a percentage paid owner operator, gets canceled, do you think that paying him the value of that load will get rewarded long term, saying, hey, Johnny, I'm really sorry, this carrier broke, this guy just bailed on us with this load, and so I'm going to pay you. You're going to get that load. Just go home, be with your family, do what you got to do, the event you got going to, or whatever the reason you need to be home. He gave you lots of notice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was your job. You're the professional dispatcher. That was your job to get him home, and it failed. So are you willing to put that risk there? Because guess what? If you didn't, you just said, I can't get you a load, you're just going to have to go home. So what's the driver going to feel? Crap. I give this guy 2 weeks notice. How's he gonna? What's his commute when he sees another trucker? So what company with? Oh, I'm with this company. How's it going there? I don't know. I'm thinking about changing. Versus you accommodated that driver. Oh man, it's great here. They really look after you. They care about you. Just one action can set you forth that other drivers want to be with you, versus you have to fight to get them with you.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Okay. I totally wholeheartedly believe that you should take care of your drivers like that. But what I'm hearing from a lot of people in management and ownership positions is that, and Adam can attest to this, Jeff can attest to this, is that the carrier will sometimes bend over backwards for a driver to make sure everything that you just listed happens, and they still do you wrong. They still and so it's tough to make that commitment, because drivers are the worst about the grass is greener on the other side. And so I do believe that word of mouth is definitely your best advertisement, right? We've gotten a few contractors that way. They were hanging out with one of our guys at the shipper, and hey, you're allowed to do this, and this, and you're going to get X amount percentage, and like, oh, okay, and it's super easy, and so we try to attract the people like at Landstar and Schneider, the guys that are already self-dispatching, but yet don't like some of the big carriers because we want to go in there as small carriers. And but there's been times where Jeff has lost a lot of money on bending over for someone, to make sure that they're taken care of, and then only to be dusted later. So I think as a carrier owner, you're a little bit gun shy about doing things like that. I know that's happened to Adam, and that's happened, and as far as me, that's happened to me. I had a driver that was struggling, and I had a steer tire that I took off. It would have been a great spare for a drive or a trailer, and he was hurting. He was, no fault. Well, kind of his fault, but his truck had a breakdown. His carrier, it was an outside carrier I was dispatching, put him out of service until he got that fixed, and he couldn't afford the repair. And so he sat here for 5 days over Memorial Day weekend last year. And so I recognized that he was hurting. He even went off on me. He like yelled at me and stuff, and I still gave him that tire. I said, look, it's worth a couple $100. Just pay me later. I know that it's hurting. And now I never got that money. I barely got a thank you, because I was trying to do my best to keep this guy on my dispatch roster. So it's like, I think that part of the problem is that drivers and brokers don't appreciate what they have. Like when they have a good carrier, when a broker has a good carrier, I know that you're different, but there are a lot of brokers that like, well, yeah, we're not paying any attention on this, even though the driver did everything right. Well, the customer just took that away, and so, but then I've had other brokers like, look, the customer's not even paying this. I'm taking this out of my own pocket because I like you as a carrier. I've had that happen. And so you have to be really selective in that process because, and then you have drivers that are great for 6 months and all of a sudden, boom, they lose their mind. It's weird.
Well, that's the thing. And I think what it comes down to is, again, especially if you're hiring an owner operator or a broker agent, is that hiring process. Like even if you're hiring someone where they're on a commission basis, like an owner operator, just because they're willing to drive on a percentage basis doesn't, because remember that driver coming on is representing your brand in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they own their own truck, the decals are going to say your MC number. Mm-hmm. It may or may not be your trailer, or it might be theirs. But the point is, even if it's their own trailer, their own truck, but the decals on the side door says your name, the actions that they have in the marketplace, like if you're based in Missouri and they're out in Seattle, Washington, or in Connecticut, thousands of miles away from you, you can't always control their actions. And so I think that's, so when you're hiring those kind of people to come on, like myself, if I was to become an agent at another brokerage, I would expect that they want to make sure that we're a fit. Mm-hmm. So you have that initial interview, which would kind of qualify. And if you're like, okay, they meet all the expectations, the standards. But I think having some of those conversations, like when they talk about experience, and I think when you're at the very early stages, like, and I'm sure it's not easy to do because my next comments could also drive people away from you. But let's say you do that initial, interviews, maybe even a drive around the block just to make sure that they seem good. Everything seems good, right? They're all checking the boxes. Now you have to, especially as an owner operator, if this is their first time, they say, yeah, I just got my truck. This is my first time doing this. That's a whole, like if someone's done this for a while and they're changing, I would always be questioning why. Or if someone has been an owner operator and they're coming to you, why? Not saying I don't want them, but I want to understand. I want to make sure that I'm not making this, whatever the carrier that you got burned by or you perceive to get burned by, I want to make sure that my current operations and processes aren't the same as that other carrier, that you're just coming here to set yourself up for the same situation. And that's by having some real deep conversations. Like, so what, you have to ask those open-ended questions. Like what's making you leave? Why did you leave? And if it's oh, well, they had a contract that they lost and their new freight, I don't like it, So it wasn't for me, or there was a management change or something like that. But you have to find out the reasons.
Well, so I agree with you, and that's what we try to do. But sometimes, and we saw this when the rates were really good. So if you're a new carrier and you're trying to bring on multiple trucks, the first 5 they've got to be the most important carriers or contractors. I'm sorry. But what happens is the insurance goes up, the stress goes up, and then the carrier owner might be like, you know what, I want to get out of the truck. So at that point, it becomes, I want to get as many people on my carrier as possible. And so what they do is, like, if you can pass the insurance, boom, you're in. Like without even an interview, barely. And there's so many small carriers that do that. And not realizing that when they quit, you're losing your ELD, you're you got this insurance payment, and so the challenges are, if you want to be selective, it's hard to even be selective, because a lot of times, I've talked to, now we got a good crew here at Like Trucking, but if people keep asking me if I put somebody in my truck, I'd be like, no, because I if I talk to 10, and I used to be a trainer, if I talk to 10 drivers, there's so many elements. You got to do. Will they take care of the truck? Will they run it safely? Are they good drivers? Will they treat the truck like they're homeless and have it trashed? And I have a friend of mine that recently had a driver just that they trusted, that they had a good relationship with, just suddenly lose his mind and stole the truck, and it was abandoned in another city. They had to go get it, and it was trashed on the inside. There was a bullet left there as kind of a message. I mean, there's so many different elements. So a good carrier is going to do the interview steps that you've talked about. And yes, the name's on the side of the truck. You're absolutely correct with that. If but usually if we, like, if a carrier has a driver that is completely horrible about customer service when they're at the shipper and receiver, and yes, they're giving your name, a bad name, the carrier can come in and kind of help correct that a little bit, and eventually that driver's going to go away.
Well, here's the thing. At the end of the day, and I'm sure both of you can have different experiences on this, but it's no different. A lot of freight brokerages, like the bigger freight brokerages that are hiring as employees, like agents, to people come work their operations division and so forth, they when they hire, they, just like big companies out there, they prefer to hire young people.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they can shape them the way they want.
Yep.
Like to hire, like, for example, and I'm sure that, Steve, you probably have to deal with this, a driver that's with your company that has 20 years behind the wheel, and you have to teach them something or show them something. It's a totally different conversation how you approach someone who's a veteran in the industry. They have respect amongst their peers versus some new driver that's only been doing it for a couple of years. How you talk to them and the message that you need to convey is totally different. And if you're not able to do that, it's a hard thing. It's really hard to teach no dog new tricks, so to speak.
Yeah, and that puts me in a good position, because I am old school, but I'm also keeping up with the new things, right? And I've got a friend of mine that just started as a CDL instructor, and in my mind, I didn't tell him this, but in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I bet you this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And sure enough, everything I predicted happened, because I can look at it from the CDL mill, perspective, but then I can also see it as, you want to do good, you want to educate, you want to make sure that these drivers come out prepared, but most CDL mills don't care.
Well, exactly. Well, I was going to say, see, like, you could take this, you could put these in the same kind of pathways.
Mm-hmm.
You take an owner operator, some driver that was a company driver for, say, 5 years, built himself up, bought a truck, became an owner operator, worked for a company for, say, 3-4 years. You got a freight broker agent, same thing. They're fairly new, only a couple of years into the industry, became an agent. and they want to leave. And you found out from both of them what happened was they basically came on, and they were fairly new to the industry, no one mentored them. So they were given some bad advice by this carrier or this company, and it took them a while to realize what was happening, and they just had a bad experience at the end of the day. So in those circumstances, you have to have, like, you can interview them, but you almost have to literally have that question saying, are you willing to unlearn your old habits and relearn some positive professional habits? Are you willing to do that? And if they say yes, great. If they say, well, I don't know, I've already been doing this for 5 years, I'm not sure how hard I want to work at it. Because saying, well, here's the reality, that why you have these problems was your lack of the previous person didn't fully train you as well as they potentially could have. I'm willing to, but I'm only willing to if you're willing to receive it. I'll guide you and coach you, but I'm not going to do it if you're just not going to listen and not actually execute what I'm going to teach you to help give you a long-lasting career in this industry.
When I interview people that want to use my dispatch service, that's exactly what I look for. I look for people that are willing to accept criticism and instruction. You know, if they play the blame game, if I have someone call me and say, you know, the broker this, the broker that, the broker this, the broker that, or they're asking for the impossible. I need to make $2 all miles, and where do you live? Oh, Massachusetts. You know, but during my interview process, I look for people that are willing to learn, wanting to learn, have the ability to learn, and also they've got good communication skills,
right?
That kind of thing.
And this goes back to the kind of as a story is. We have the opening, and then it comes back. Usually it circles back around. Well, it's back to why I came on live, was talking about the brokerages, and like you being on the fence, not sure if you want to dive into it or not, and those that are carriers or owner operators that want to get their own customers, or small carriers that don't have direct freight, is the sales process is hard because, and I'll give this 2 examples. When you don't have the customer yet, the steps you have to do, like say, okay, this business that you go to, they have freight, and that the broker you've worked with is not the greatest broker compared to other brokers you've worked with. So you think, I can do a better service to this customer than what that current broker is doing. But how you get so that you can actually be in front of the customer and convey that message to them? What you have to do at that stage is all significantly different than there's another skill set that happens, that if I said to you, to Steve and to Adam, someone emails you a quote. Yeah, I need a freight quote from Dallas, Texas to let's say Cheyenne, Wyoming. That's all they say. I need a freight quote, right? There's a whole list of questions you're going to have to ask from there.
Agreed.
And do you know the right questions to ask? So there's the sale. Remember, as a brokerage, back to, the different videos I've done with you guys before, but there's that life cycle, right? There's the sales, acquiring the customers. Once you get the customer, it doesn't mean you got the business. Just the fact that they're engaging with you is all that's matter. It may take you another few months thereafter because they're going to quote you and you don't get the freight. So you get discouraged, and then you get another chance and then you don't get it. Like, you have to find ways, because it might have been how you, or you, let's say you did get finally one load and it didn't go well. Well, what was your quote? If your quote just replied to the customer and you put $2,000, no conditions, no details on your quote, you just wrote $2,000. Those are the people that, I assure you, unless you have a really long-term relationship with the customer and you've established like some standards behind the scenes, like they know that if a driver takes longer, they're going to pay. They know you guys have established some standards that you have some, from previous experience. Mm-hmm. But if you're fairly new to a customer and you don't have that relationship yet, you don't quite know them, how things work, you don't know their hierarchy of their business and how it works, and you don't know that how difficult the owner is to their staff or not, how nice and kind they are or how hard they are on them, things of that nature, figuring out how the different personalities work within the company, and you just wrote back $2,000, those are the loads I guarantee you will have problems. 9 times
Well,
out
yeah.
of 10.
When I call a broker on a load and they go straight to the rate, I'm like, whoa, hold the phone here, hold on. I want to know, if they don't put a rate out there, I want to know all the information as much as I can before I give them a bid. And Jeff, I was going to text you this, but Jeff, if you're listening, I'll call you after this feed. I ask questions before we even get to the negotiation tactic. So if I was in a position, or as I hope to be someday, where I'm talking to a shipper, I would do the same thing. As you said, it would be 20 questions, and then I would be able to think. I would be able to evaluate. I'll be able to see. And my question to myself was, can I cover this? What kind of carrier can I use to cover this? Do I have anybody to cover this? I had a driver call me one time. It's like, hey man, here's a phone number for a direct shipper. Give them a call. And I was like, where are they at? Oh, they're out of Seattle. I'm like, okay, you're the only truck that hangs out there. Are you willing to service this customer? And then he's like, no. I'm like, well, then why'd you even give this to me? Because I would want to utilize the truck to service that customer. Other than that, I'm just going against all the CH Robinsons and the TQLs. I mean, what good am I going to do? But if I can
Exactly.
offer personalized service, then that's my foot in the door. But if you take away my foot in the door, then what am I going to do? Knock on the door. Hey, I know you like TQL and CH Robinson, but can you give
Well,
me a load? I
it's
know that.
The cliche is niches, and the riches are in the niches, but it is true. It doesn't have to be completely niche freight, but you have to be, to stand out against the big brokerages, you got to find different customers, different types of freight, different lanes that those brokerages aren't willing to do. It's just like, right, like who are you trying to service? That's what, there's so many elements involved that we're not going to be able to touch it all. But do you remember, I think I sent you a video of prospecting, how I gave an example where I had a list of shippers from a database and I picked one. I don't know if, Adam, I'll have to send that to you, but do you remember how I showed you this one company didn't look much, but just, I didn't even call the company, and I know a lot about that company. Remember, I think that was the one I told you that none of their freight would be on a load board, or very little.
Yeah.
And you remember, and I showed how, oh, interesting. Here's a flatbed load. Look at the picture. There's a double drop load. It's all right there. The history is there. They have those carriers that they're using are high level carriers, right? So the point is that this example, when someone says, can I get a rate from Dallas to Cheyenne, Wyoming? Well, how much research are you doing about that carrier, that customer, before you get, there's a whole steps I do. Now, everyone's got their different shticks. And some people are going to say, well, I hate cold calling. Yep. But guess what? There are ways around it. And LinkedIn can be a powerful tool, because most people, let's say you're going to put a post on LinkedIn. Most carriers will put a post about information for carriers, not their customers that are going to use their trucks. So that's the mind shift right there. Remember, I think I've talked to you a little bit about, there's things that you can do to make your profile better. And part of that is you need a company profile on LinkedIn, and then your individual, because if your company profile has a logo and you have your website listed there, now when you just start typing in the company, if it will link, when you put your name in there, it'll link it, and now you got a nice background. And then what's nice is if you can have if you can have all the drivers using the same background on their LinkedIn profiles, create some consistency when people click around. But the other thing that if you think about LinkedIn as this way, instead of thinking of it as just, it's just like, there's a different ways. It's a job hunting place, sometimes informative. But if you think about it on a daily basis, LinkedIn, it's your keynote speech to the world.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, I want to interrupt this. Like trucking, we have flatbeds now. We just acquired our first flatbed trailer, and so if you're a flatbedder, come on over. We can get you a trailer, and we've entered the flatbed world. So now we got all three platforms.
Safety for you is just gone up again.
Right.
Well, not only
driver,
does the driver have to know flatbed, but now you have to learn flatbed.
Yeah, well, I'm not dispatching them, so.
Oh, okay. But you're a safety guy, so you got to know.
I would. In fact, it wouldn't be
load securement and everything.
Exactly that, and exactly that's where the biggest thing comes down is understanding that if something happens with flatbeds is that you have to identify pretty darn sweet how toot sweet if that was preventable or not preventable and all that good stuff. So that's a whole element. So the summary is LinkedIn is a platform that can be done, but if you can put at least one post a month on there, but make sure it's a post that's targeting your potential shipper audience, not about you and not about how great you are or some the FMCSA is now changing some rule, unless that's really how you can make that as a point, but you need to word it to appeal to your potential audience. And why I say that is I was recently at this conference where we had a keynote speaker, and this keynote speaker, the whole thing was about LinkedIn. And if you realize, I didn't realize this, when people are scrolling on LinkedIn, 95% of them are not in the buyer mode. Meaning, they use LinkedIn, they have connections. Like you look at someone, they got 10 connections. You look at someone else, they got 500 connections. Most of the people there are kind of just seeing what's happening, kind of like Facebook. You just scroll in. They're not thinking about actually buying something for their business, right? You need a hoist to help, or a new jack for your trucks, or you need something you're not really thinking about. But if you come across some truck supply company, or you come across a brokerage and they're giving out messages, all of a sudden the day when that 5% happens that someone's actually thinking about buying, now because you've been posting consistent good information, they might, I've seen this person before. I've seen this service before. Let me check them out. And one thing can lead to another. So if you can do one post, I'll tell you, I got the notes. I got the notes right here from the meeting. Okay. Yeah, most are scrolling, not posting. Connect with others, engage with others by posting regularly. You'll want to connect with. View your profile, make sure it's public. Turn on the public profile visibility so photos appear. Your profile, remember with LinkedIn, your profile brings legitimacy. That's what it does. When people can look up a carrier or a freight broker and find you on LinkedIn, they click on your profile that leads you to the company landing page. And that company landing page leads to the company website. And they see this consistency of logos, consistency about their messaging, and that everything's syncing together. You have a website, you have a corporate phone numbers, you've got different departments and emails, right? I always say when you're a small carrier, you can have different emails, one for accounting, one for operations, and one for sales or something like that, but you can have different ones. Use Canva as a tool to help you create better backup photo backgrounds. If you have a difficult name to pronounce, there's a feature on the mobile app where you can click on it and you say your name, so that it will help others. If you have a unique name, that you can actually say it, so they can play it and they can hear the pronunciation of your name. Okay. They're saying, so yeah,
that's handy.
Yeah, 95% scrollers not active. Turn on creator mode. That's the other button. There's a little button in the settings to turn on creator mode so that you can make posts. Activity feed tells if you're active in LinkedIn. That's why you want to be posting. So it's saying share good news. So if you can do on LinkedIn, here's the advice from the experts: 2 posts a month on LinkedIn, 1 blog post. If you have a website, if you could do 1 blog post, because then you can advertise that blog post once a month from the blog post to your LinkedIn profile. And then at least 1 email blast, like if you have that, so kind of that blog post email, and then once a quarter, so once every 3 months at minimum, put together a newsletter that targets your audience, bringing up information like, did you know, right? Like, hey, did you know some fact, how it would help shippers better understand how your services can be of use, or your service, your carrier or your brokers of there. Answer common questions. Use that as a tool when shippers, that's a way to put a post. you could put a post saying, if you ever have questions about carriers, put them in my thing. Maybe people you're in your connections, and some shipper or broker may ask you a question, and use that as a way to make a post. But think about, hey, I get shippers always asking, why do drivers do this, or why do carriers do this when they come here? Make a post of it, explain it. And so you're developing closer relationships but the more that you can make yourself relevant on LinkedIn to your audience, that's a way to build. If you're trying to build yourself as a brokerage, that's a way. We have at our brokerage, I see on our website now, there's a couple of the young guys, there's a couple of younger people. They're really putting a lot of posts, but they're putting good information out there, and they're showing pictures of loads. They're doing some good stuff. I'm not doing it as much, and partly because I've been so busy. I will get to it, but I've been swamped. I've been working more than I need to. And like I said, I think I made a comment that if someone spent a week with me, they wouldn't want to become a broker, because I'm not the trophy broker working banker hours and living the high life. I'm in the trenches, busting my butt weekly. I work a lot of days till 9:00 at night, and I work a lot. So that's it. So just, think about it. I came in just to basically say, if you've been hesitant about the sales process, you got to, if you really want that, you got to start, because it's not going to happen overnight. That's the main thing I can tell you.
No,
if you want
I hear
sales,
you.
you have to you have to start, and you need some mentors. And if you have someone like you can call on me, if you're ever doing it, Steve, and just say, okay, I made this call and this is what went down. I can just share my insight. I'm not saying I'm an expert at it, but I'm pretty darn good. And I can share some insight as to the biggest thing is actually the call preparation. What do you like? I'll give you a simple tip that I learned many years ago. You go into a call with 3 goals. You're coming up with 1. 3, 1. That seems hard. Well, remember, the 1 might just be, you might go in there hoping to find out what kind of equipment they have, what lanes they run, and the third one, which might be the most important, is you come out of the call that either you found out who the actual decision maker is for freight. So you found out the person's first name. Joanne is the head of logistics. That's a win.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it that you found out that they don't use brokerages? So, okay, you've qualified that. Or maybe they work where they only twice a year put out tenders for new providers. So you've now have to, when you're doing all this stuff, a big part of it is you have to be a little bit organized. You don't have to have fancy computer systems. You could use a free Google Sheets. You can use a napkin, but you need a method. Mm-hmm. So if you sit there and say, okay, I'm going to call today, and you called 50 people, that's great. You that's not the end game. You might do that at the beginning just to get your confidence talking to people, right? But if you talk to experienced brokerages, they're going to say calling 100 people a day is not the game. It's you need to target your audience and who you're after, and figuring that out. But the point is, you need to have it that when you finish a call and they say, yeah, you know what, we're really busy right now. Say, okay, well, it would be okay if I call you after July 4th long weekend, like July 5th, July 6th. Yeah, that sounds good. So you have to have a method to write it down and remind yourself, so that you call. And when you call on that July the 5th and say, hey, oh yeah, this is Steve, or this is Rob. I called you a month ago. I know you were really busy. Hopefully things have gotten better for you. I said I'd call you around July 5th, and here you are. Oh yeah, it's gotten a little bit better, but this is going on. So we're not really needing trucks right now. Well, how about if I call you after September long weekend? Oh, sure. And then you call again. All of a sudden, even though it's been 3 months, but this place has freight, and they're a nice company, not too big, not too small, but they're kind of like the ideal customer you're looking for. And the first impression they have is consistency. You always called when you said you would. So at least, mm-hmm. if anything, that's going to earn you. They're going to feel, well, this person's actually consistent. So let me just hear what they have to say. At minimum, they might just do that, right? So that, polite persistence wears down resistance. And you have to know when to push and when not to. And I think that's like the art of knowing, like, think about any sales, real estate sales. car salespeople. Car salespeople are the classic. You may hate them and think they're scumbags, but they've learned the art of closing sales. Right? You leave the
What?
place, right?
So CDN, this book that you generously sent me, I think you wrote this. I think you're a ghostwriter. And you wrote this under a different name because everything you've talked about is in this book, right? This has been one of the most valuable things you've given me, and I really appreciate it because I would like to kind of enter that world. My whole limbo is, it's evaluating the situation. So I agree with everything you're saying, and I do need to be more active on LinkedIn. And I've got a brother-in-law that owns a business that he and I, it's completely away from trucking and all that, but he and I have had some great conversations about networking and sales, and I watch how he utilizes LinkedIn. And and a lot of people like RD was in here saying, you must own LinkedIn because you talk about it all the time. Well, if you truly want to be a business owner and network, I think LinkedIn. I woke up my LinkedIn page. It's funny. I've been going over. I reestablished connection with my LinkedIn. I reestablished my blog that I wrote like 14 years ago. I reestablished that, and it's all part of the networking. And just mentioning Landstar in that one video, I've gotten a lot of new subs. I've gotten a lot of new people watching. Networking's important, but the most important thing that this book talks about is listening to the other side and understanding. So when they tell you something, you got to understand where that comes from. That's how you negotiate with terrorists, right? Is doing that. So everything that you're saying is important. So, but I know you're pretty
So,
busy,
are you saying
and
that
I think my
freight
connection's being
brokers
all
are
wonky.
terrorists?
Go ahead.
So it seems to me what you're saying is that freight brokers are terrorists. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
Say that again. You broke up on my end.
It's never mind. Not important.
What I did is I put the person that gave us this person that gave us the keynote speech.
Yes, they are.
They part of their business is a marketing thing. So I know a lot of people don't like the cold calling aspect of things. So maybe what you can do is enhance your website, and having a better website think about with websites, a lot of companies are out there. How many companies are out there that you never can reach someone, but they've done such a good job? Let's say you're buying something, a product. So you buy the product from their website, you order it online, it gets shipped to your house. If there's a problem, you go back to the website. They may have a chat bot of some sort, but their frequently asked questions are so good. It's like they thought about everything. And then when you had to exchange it or warranty it, the process, they thought about it from end to end, right? They made that process so easy. So what can you do as a carrier or as a broker to enhance that experience? Think about that yellow cab user experience. How does your customers feeling? Like if your customer is the broker, what's the perception of you at the end of the day, right? You're the carrier, you got a direct shipper, or the broker, and you have a customer. What's their perception? And there's the website there. The link is in there. And Blythe, she's been on. She was our keynote speaker, and she's the one that had all this insight about LinkedIn. She's on FreightWaves, and she was our keynote speaker, and she also hosted a panel that we had. And so she's got some pretty good insight. She sits on a variety of boards. And if you look at her profile, I'll actually just put her in here, because if you look at her profile and how it's like, she's not a broker, she's just a logistics person, so to speak, but in social media context, and everything is logistics.com. But if you look at how, you can go to her LinkedIn profiles, go to her websites, and see how she's promoting herself, right? So, but that's it. So I'm going to let you go as well. I got to get on my day here, but that's all I came on. I probably dominated too much.
No, you're fine. I had literally
we
nothing to
lost
talk
Adam.
about. I mean, I
We
can
lost
only
Adam.
talk about rates for so long. Yeah, we
Yeah.
lost.
Okay.
So,
Well, it
but
was good.
anyways,
It was
thank
good.
you, CDM, for coming on. I really, really,
Yeah.
really do appreciate you.
And it was good to see Adam and yourself, and I appreciate
Yeah.
letting me on. And but like I said, I just wanted to come on and put some words of encouragement that I believe you're like for yourself or anyone that's doing this. If you have a little bit of experience in the trucking game, you understand the logistics, you know how the process works. If you understand how shipping works, like the whole thing, okay, you got to, you know, quote customers. You understand that you got to book the truck. It's got to pick up. There's paperwork involved. All those steps. If you kind of have that, but you're not actually making those things happen, but you understand it, you're actually much more knowledgeable than you believe, right? You talk about any of the new brokerages that are coming from other countries, they have no idea. So the knowledge you have, you actually have a lot of knowledge. So
Right.
it's now how you can get yourself so that if you're at the point where you want customers and you want to manage it yourself, you just have to get yourself to that next level. And I'm just putting that words of encouragement is it's not an easy process, but it's completely doable. And you have to be consistent at it and find yourself people that can help you, that are willing to coach you, and just it's a step-by-step process. And getting the new customer, that steps. And once you actually have the customer, that steps. Managing their freight, that steps. They're all different processes. And once you've done it a few times, it starts to come together. And I'm just here to provide that words of encouragement. So with that,
thank you, CDN.
I will let you go.
Appreciate you.
Have a great Friday.
All right, thank you. All right, that was CDN. Go check out his YouTube channel. He's got a few videos up, and he tries to, he's learning that it's hard to do a YouTube channel and have a successful business at the same time. So, but anyways, thanks for everybody. Thanks for Adam for showing up. And by the way, like trucking, if you're a flatbedder, you can come on over. We have that option now. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Strength for today, hope for tomorrow. Aggression turns to screws. Later.